European Liberal Forum, the political foundation and think tank of the ALDE party. Thank you very much for welcoming us today to your homes, to your living rooms, or maybe if the sun is shining, to your terraces outside, to talk to us a little bit about the corona situation, economic recovery, and maybe also a little bit about what happened yesterday with the EU leaders when they could not reach consensus on important questions. We have two distinguished guests here today, Guy Verhofstadt and Luis Garicano, but I would like to hand over to our dear moderator today, Peter Müller, head of the office of Der Spiegel in Brussels, who will lead us through the discussion today, through the presentations, and hopefully tickle a little bit our panelists today to get some answers and a deeper understanding of their ideas how to get through the economic crisis that is following the health crisis here in Europe. Peter, thank you very much for being with us today, and you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks Daniel, and thanks for the European Liberal Forum for organizing this. I don't want to hold you up for too long with preliminaries, just a broad outline, I think, from my side, what's going to happen. I will quickly introduce the two panelists, which basically don't need any introduction, and then I will kickstart the conversation, kick it off with some questions. And then, of course, you, our viewers and listeners, can send us questions, and I will pass them on to the panelists. So I think we should have a lively discussion about a topic which, of course, is very timely. The paper our two panelists have written as the headline "Toward a European Reconstruction" and proposes a European Reconstruction Fund to help Europe to get out of this corona crisis, especially when it comes to the economic impact. Our speakers don't need an introduction. Of course, this is very much true for Guy Verhofstadt, the long-time Prime Minister in Belgium, of course, the long-time boss of the liberal group in the European Parliament, which formerly was called ALDE, and the boss of the Brexit Steering Committee till recently. So I'm very happy that Guy Verhofstadt is with us today. And we have Luis Garicano from Spain, who is also a member of the European Parliament since the last election. Luis is the deputy head of the Renew Group and also the deputy head of the ALDE party. He's an economist by training, holds a PhD with the University of Chicago, so this might already tell us something. He's teaching at the IE Business School in Spain. And he entered politics, I read, when he joined Ciudadanos, the Liberal Party in Spain, and wrote their economic manifesto and drafted their economic program. So Luis, also thanks for being with us today. Mr. Verhofstadt, let me start with my first question to you, because you were, of course, already commenting what happened yesterday evening. Yesterday evening, the heads of states and government came together in a video summit, which was, I would say, much shorter than many of us expected. And they basically tasked the Commission with to start working on a proposal on a recovery fund. So start working on something you have proposed in your paper and the op-ed which accompanied the paper as well. Are you, Mr. Verhofstadt, happy with the result of yesterday evening's summit?
Well, I'm happy with one thing. That is that finally the ping pong we have seen the last weeks stopped now. So the ping pong, you remember that Eurogroup could not agree on the recovery fund. They sent it to the Council. The Council sent it back to the Eurogroup. Last Eurogroup, they sent it back to the European Council. And now the European Council sent it to the Commission. So that ends, I think, the ping pong of the last weeks. But nevertheless, we have lost a lot of weeks now, because in my opinion, from day one, it was the task of the Commission to come forward with the reconstruction and recovery package, and that the fastest as possible. Why the fastest as possible? Because I think that it's clear that the damage of this health crisis will be huge. Yesterday in the council, Lagarde spoke about a possibility of 15% of the European GDP. So I think if we want to give some future to our companies and to our workforce, we cannot wait weeks and weeks and weeks now. And so what I hope now is that the Commission, who in my opinion has waited too long, comes forward now the fastest as possible with a credible plan. And hopefully, inspired by the work we did with Luis Garicano the last weeks, because we are already working on this. There are more or less 6 weeks on this, 5-6 weeks on this idea.
Mr. Garicano, yesterday Commission President von der Leyen, after the whole video summit was over, gave a little press conference, and she gave a glimpse of what many of us journalists already have reported, the question how this recovery instrument, this recovery fund could function. This fund the Commission is now tasked to prepare. She said, and this is a bit of technicality, but you will of course be able to walk us through this. She said that the Commission wants to use the headroom in the long-term budget to raise money on the markets and channel this money via the long-term budget to member states. Would you say that this approach, broadly speaking, makes sense? And how, this is the second part of my question, does it relate to your proposal of issuing EU consoles, EU annuities? How does it differ? Why is your proposal better? Can you set the stage a bit on the economic technicalities?
All right, happy to do that. First, I shared this evaluation of what happened yesterday. I think that there is some positive in that we are now certainly going to see a plan. And there is something positive in that everybody agrees that such a plan is necessary. Europe has now the first line of defense that was agreed by the European Central Bank, the 750 plan that allows to purchase lots of bonds from European countries. There has a second line of defense that all these Eurogroup initiatives for liquidity, the ESM, etc., the SURE program for unemployment. So in terms of like the immediate impact, Europe has liquidity, has access to credit. The problem is we don't really have an instrument to really get out of this debt overhang. There's going to be a huge amount of debt on top of all these European countries that's going to make it very hard to grow. And I would say when people like you or I would be talking to our colleagues, their thought a few weeks ago or just almost a few days ago was like, okay, we have the ESM, what else do you need? This is that. And the fact that there is now at least an agreement of principle that we need something else, I think it's a very good thing. And the Chancellor, and you will know much better, Peter, what she really is prepared to do, but the fact that the Chancellor talked about increasing contributions is a huge step forward. However, I think what the Commission is putting on the table is worrying and it's disappointing. And the Commission, as an expert, and Guillermo was just chatting about it before this, at these smoke and mirrors of like we put 17 billion for the Juncker plan, but we say it's 200, or we put 25 billion for the EIB, but we say it's 200. At these kind of, we put a little bit, we make it grow in the telling.
Magic.
So yeah, magic, yeah, the smoke and mirrors. So we have this 320 billion. That is the instrument that the Commission is setting up. That's what they're setting up, and we can judge that. Problem is they're calling that 2 trillion. How are they calling it 2 trillion? They're calling it 2 trillion by saying, well, we have the MFF, which is 1 trillion, but that's what it is. It's the MFF. There was going to be an MFF before. We have the leverage investments, which we don't know how much they are, and we have 320 billion. That's what really they are putting on the table, of which they say 160 billion is going to be loans and 160 billion is going to be grants. What is concerning about this, and that's going to lead me to our proposal. What is concerning about this is the actual MFF, the money for the foundation of European functioning, is actually going to go down because the Commission in this leaked document says states are not going to put any more money. We're going to front load the expense. So that means front loading for our viewers means they're going to spend more money in the first years and less money in later years. That means by definition, in the later years, the budget of the European Union is going to be even less. And they say the whole budget is going to be below what Charles Michel proposed. So the whole thing is smoke and mirrors. I mean, it's going to be less money, there's going to be generating more money. There's something odd. What we appreciate, Guy and me appreciate the political constraints. And what we are saying is, because the political constraints exist, and we have to be mindful that countries are not going to want to put more money, that we need a massive investment fund. The way we think about it is, look, if Europe is going to lose more than 10% of GDP over the next year, then it has to have an investment fund, which is basically 10% of GDP, a little bit more than 10% of GDP, which is the kind of magnitudes we're talking about. How do you fund that? And the political image of this is, okay, you're going to have you have to find a way to fund a very large plan with relatively small amounts of money, and you cannot really ask the countries to make larger contributions. So how do you do that? What we say is, look, when England had the Napoleonic Wars, had the First World War, when America had in the 18th centuries to pay reparations, when they had the South Sea bubble, there were big one-off events that they financed with very long-dated debt. In fact, so long-dated that it couldn't be rescued, it could be paid back whenever the state wants. It gives an interest, and you repay it whenever you want. That's called a perpetual bond, to console. This is a one-off event in a generation. We're going to have, not in a generation, in a century. This is the biggest epidemic that we have since the flu in 1919 of the past century, 100 years ago. Let's do a once in a generation, a once in a lifetime financing, which is we emit this console, perpetual debt, and we pay it from the money that Europe is going to generate from new own resources that the Commission has proposed, that Parliament has demanded multiple times. Digital tax, plastic tax, basically make the big polluters and the big digital companies that don't pay taxes pay what they should, and use that money to pay the interest on these consoles. We were very conservative. We say 2.5% is what you would have to pay interest. George Soros wrote an editorial in The Guardian 2 days ago where he said that 0.5% would be enough. Then 5 billion would allow you to put a plan worth €1 trillion. That seems a bit cheap for me, but regardless, 3 issues. First, it's permanent. It's a perpetual console, so you don't pay the principal. Second, you pay the interest from the new own resources of the European Union. That means the European countries don't have to put extra money. Third, you give this money to the countries, not as loans, but as grants, so that you allow them to get out of this mountain of debt they risk falling into.
Let me ask both of you, maybe Guy Verhofstadt wants to jump in first. On a related matter, in your paper you point out, and of course you rightly do so, that European debt is nothing new, that it's already existing, that we have bonds issued by the Commission, by the European Investment Bank in Luxembourg, and of course the ESM. Nevertheless, member states seem to be, and continue to seem to be, very reluctant to let the European Commission actually to take on debt. How do you explain that? Is this just the fact that member states are fearing a transfer of power to the Commission, or what's behind this reluctancy of the issue of debt when it comes to that question?
Personally, I think that it is a question of power. That member states are very reluctant to give this possibility to the European Commission to do so, and the same is true for the other element, that is the new own resources, because with these new own resources, what we want to do is to give to the European level, to the European Commission, possibility to raise income that is not covered today in member states. So we are talking about the emission trading, we are talking about plastic tax, we are talking about possible digit tax. And digit tax is a very good one, because who's going to be the winners in this crisis now? It's going to be the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons, who with all data and all services will become richer and richer and richer. The only companies who will come out wealthier from this crisis by the end of the year and next year will be the big Asian, but certainly American digital service companies. So it's a good moment to say, yeah, this digitax, we need to do it. And that income that comes from this digitax, that we want to use together with the plastic tax and the ETS to pay the interests on this, what we think 1 trillion of consoles that can be put on the market. And I have to tell you, when I hear today that some countries are reluctant to that, I don't understand them. Because the only alternative to it is to increase the national contributions of member states in the MFF. And I don't think that none of the 27 want that, because they will all be in deficit, all be in debt. So it's impossible to ask more national contributions. So the only way forward is to do it by own resources. And that's not new. Own resources has been the basis of the financing of the European Union from 57, 58, from the beginning, from the Treaty of Rome. It's only because of the British rebate that in the 80s, we needed to replace these VIT, customs duties, and other own resources by GNI contributions. Why? Because you can only give rebates to a country when that country pays a contribution to the European Union. You cannot give a rebate on own resources. That doesn't exist. You cannot give to a country a rebate, for example, when the union is fully financed by VAT or fully financed, for example, by custom duties. So the GNI contributions, who have poisoned the European Union, is a consequence of the rebate. So it's a good moment now to not to ask to member states to increase their national contributions to the MFF. I should even freeze the national contributions to the MFF and to use these new own resources to do that. And then my third element, I think the best way to do it, and that's also a question of power, is to do it with grants, subsidies, direct help. Why? Because giving loans, that's like there is a fire, and then we're gonna do it, and we're gonna give loans to member states that will increase the fire. It's like fuel. It's like adding fuel to a fire. So I think we have to be intelligent and not to add again a burden of debt to member states. So it 3 times when we talk about own resources, is it grants or is it loans? And it's 3 times a question of the hesitation that I see is more a question of power than a question of rational. Because rationally, everybody can understand, okay, that's the way forward. You cannot increase national contributions. We have to do it by new own resources. Why not to put the digitax? Because these American companies will be wealthier than ever before after this crisis. And why not to do it with direct subsidies to our companies instead of giving new loans to member states who are already over indebted.
If you allow me, Peter, just one little tiny thing on the digitax that Guy is mentioning. Netflix in Spain last year, sorry, it fell. Netflix in Spain last year paid 3,000 euros in corporate tax. 3,000, okay? Less than probably got in one apartment block in income. I mean, it's...
No, this is a joke. But I think, and this is exactly what one of our participants is actually hinting at, and I would ask you, Mr. Garicano, to maybe take this question. This is, of course, recovery fund. All this sounds very good, but Sophie Banuta wants to know who would buy these perpetual bonds. What makes you think that there will be a big appetite And what actually, and this is a question I have to say I have prepared myself as well, what happens if interest goes up? Because these very, very long perpetual bonds tend to have higher interest rates than what we have normally on the market. So what's your take on that?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, and let's see. Now, who's going to buy that? The economists always would answer what you answer at the end, which is, well, it depends on the price, of course. There's always a demand at the right price. That's why we were pretty conservative. We put 2.5%. There is a lot of countries that are putting debt in the market for less. The Treasury, the French Treasury, has bonds dated up to 40 years. Israel just put out a bond for 100 years. Only in 2014, 2015, these very long-dated UK consols were actually rebought by Osborne when he was a candidate, the Chancellor George Osborne. So this is not an unprecedented thing. These things have been circulated until 7-8 years ago. These British consols. So the question is, what's the price? We believe that, given that it's backed by the European Union budget, we don't think that there would be a big difficulty in placing them in the market. Of course, like everything else that is happening now in Europe, the European Central Bank stands behind these obligations as well, and would be the buyer of last resort. I don't envision at the price we were talking about, 2.5%, in this very low interest rate environment, that there would be a difficulty in placing them. In fact, as I was arguing, George Soros, who knows much more on investment than I will ever know, thought 0.5% was actually the price. So we were very conservative, Verhofstadt and myself.
Well,
can I come in?
Yeah, please.
1 second on this, because yeah. I was for a long time vice president of APG. That's the biggest Dutch pension fund. You know, APG. Yeah, that's well, their portfolio. What at that time 325 billion euros. So it's a big thing. Eh? It's the biggest Dutch pension fund. Well, they were hoping for such investment too. I think institutional investors in general, pension funds, but other institutional investors are looking for that. They are hoping that on the European level there would be an instrument like that to invest in. For them, it's a far more secure instrument than to pick up, how to say, national bonds between countries. So they are hoping for such. Institutional investors are very much in favor of that, and hope to see one day such instruments on the European level to invest in.
Yes, so just to add, I mean, indeed, you have liabilities which are very long-term, like you have a life insurance that's going to be 60, 70 years there that you're going to have in your portfolio. You actually want to match it with this kind of investments. And on the price, just to mention a couple of prices, the 3.5 billion bond that Austria put in 2017 was a 100 years bond, had a 2.1% coupon. The European Financial Stability Mechanism in 2017 also had a 40-year bond with a 2% coupon. So, I mean, when we were looking at these numbers, honestly, I think 2.5% is not at all unlikely to be a good price.
I mean, it's not only, of course, a question about how to raise the money, but our participants remind us that it's also a question of how to spend the money.
Yep.
One participant asks if, and I think this is a very valid question, in which way ever this recovery fund, which the Commission comes up with, is being funded, if the Commission should attach any strings to how the money is used when it hands it out to member states. So if, for instance, there should be modernization requirements when handing out grants or loans. And I think this is not hinting at more austerity or cutting public spending. It's more like, should there be, I don't know, Green Deal issues which are considered, or should we use this money in other ways to support a modern economy to come out of this crisis? Whomever of you wants to jump in, it would be interesting how you guys see this.
Well, I think that I see in any way that this money, and therefore I think that grants or subsidies or direct help are far more interesting than to start giving new loans to member states. The conditions have to be, okay, the recovery of the economy, the digital transformation that we absolutely need in Europe, and the Green Deal. It is an enormous opportunity, I think. So in a crisis, it is also an opportunity, always. And there is a good saying that say, don't waste a crisis. Well, that's a crisis not to waste. And how we can, what we need to do not to waste this crisis, I think that is to use that money, that Reconstruction and Recovery Fund, to do in the same time, at the same time, this digital transformation on the one hand, and this Green Deal at the other hand. It's a unique opportunity to do so. And so I should use that money there for these two goals. And not to say, okay, you need money, in this country, here you have it. No. It needs really to be used for these two main objectives of the reform of the European economy.
So I completely agree with that. That you need to use this money for European public goods building, for things that are in the interest of Europe. It's Europe who's paying. It will be the Commission. So I can see that people will be mistrustful of having certain governments spend the money. I think that's why we think it should be the Commission with parliamentary control. Yep. It should be the European Parliament control, etc. It should be properly budgeted and spent. And in these European public goods like digital, environmental, maybe sometimes transport, that is green transport, etc. And I think that it's very much one European public interest to get good reforms, good educational systems in the countries, etc. So I have not only no opposition, but I would very much like that reform processes are encouraged with this money. There is absolutely nothing opposing that. The conditionality that worries some of us is that it's in condition of austerity, etc., that could choke recovery. But that's not no. Excluding reforms. Reforms are very welcome.
Nevertheless, I would say let's go back for just a quick minute on what the Commission is planning with kickstarting this this economic reboost with the classical MFF, at least as part of the toolbox. Isn't it true that at least the instruments which are there are well known and don't have to be newly invented? Isn't it true, and I just repeat what the Commission is saying, and not meaning that I buy all of this, but isn't it true that there, of course, you have a long tradition of parliamentary scrutiny? Isn't it also true that you could change programs, for instance, regional aid, cohesion funds, to channel money maybe more into regions which are especially affected in this crisis? So maybe if both of you, or starting with you, Mr. Garicano, can make the argument why this classical tool of EU policy might not be the best to tackle this crisis. I understand that member states, last sentence, that member state might not be willing to pay in more than what they agreed upon last time at this moment, but leave this aside. Are there other points in the MFF setups which are problematic?
No, I like the MFF. I like that it's under European scrutiny, European Parliament scrutiny. I like that it has tools that already exist, etc. So we want to bring this under the MFF. Yep. It's just a question of getting things started fast. But the current Commission proposal says in the document, says that the flexible emergency tool, the program sits at levels foreseen in February negotiation box of the President of EUCO. National contributions will be smaller than in the Commission's 2018 proposal. So it's not just putting it on the MFF or not, is that the Commission is right now thinking that it's going to be inside the same box and at the same level that they were thinking before. How is this going to happen? Guy, I mean, I guess.
No. So that there is no misunderstanding. Our proposal fits into an MFF. We want the an enhanced MFF with national contributions that are frozen, with new own resources that are used, and the whole spending of that reconstruction and recovery fund will be done based on the actual, how to say, way, methods, scrutiny, as we see with the MFF. So that's already an enormous step forward. If you compare it to the previous crisis we got, the financial crisis and the sovereign debt crisis, that is that for once, and that is the big step forward yesterday of the European Council. That's the only step forward that I see in the European Council of yesterday. That is that they all agree that it needs to be on the communitarian level, under the umbrella of the Commission, that we need to build that recovery and reconstruction fund. That's an enormous step forward, because in the previous crisis, they invented all intergovernmental patchworks and instruments and so on.
Yes.
But now, and I agree with Luis, we have to be very critical when we look now to the Commission proposal. It cannot be a proposal. It will come out officially, I think, in the coming days, in the coming weeks, a cover-up operation. Huh? That will not be accepted by the European Parliament. Because the other advantage of this of this way of thinking, of this recovery fund and reconstruction fund, it will only work if there is an agreement not only of the Council, who is the intergovernmental body, but also of the European Parliament. The European Parliament will have a full say, a full scrutiny on this fund. So the paper that Luis was talking about was a first draft circulating, apparently in the Commission, and I hope that the final version in the coming days, in the coming weeks, will be more ambitious and in any way with real money in it, and not real money in it, and not repackaging or front loading. So that's the new buzzwords where we have to be very worried about. That's the word front loading. That's not new money. That's simply money that comes from the second part of the MMF to the first part of the MFF. Or the multiplicating. That's also a very very dangerous word. That does mean, it will be more in reality than the money we put in it. So front loading, multiplicating, all this, I hope that it will be real money raised in the way we see it, I
would summarize two pleas that he and me are making here. One is for the méthode communautaire. Let's go back to the law and to Schuman and Monnet and all that, and think about the European community, not the countries. The whole financial crisis, as he very well put it, was creating all this, the Eurogroup and all these intergovernmental messes that have no control, etc. And the second plea, I put it in a tweet just an hour ago, is for please, truth in numbers. Let's not, like he's saying, front load, multiply, leverage, etc. Let's just talk about the numbers that we are talking. At least those two pleas, I think, are important.
Well, you both are referring, of course, to an ambitious plan. Let's stay with this topic of ambition, and our participants also remind us of that. And Victor says, talking about on the question how the money should be spent with the digitalization topic and the green economy, Victor says, how can these two objectives be achieved when the member states, and he says the European Parliament, seem always to have to go for the lowest common denominator? As so much things in the political process in the EU and Brussels are being watered down. What's your take on that?
I think that we can agree that things have been stuck on those two dossiers lately. And part of what has been happening is that there hasn't been political will to put more money behind the objectives. I mean, Europe said we're going to have a huge Green New Deal. And then when we looked under the hood, there was no real new money. It was all leverage this and move this around. And then the solution that somebody came up with was, oh, let's remove state aid rules and let's allow everybody to do their own Green Deal. And then it's totally the opposite of the community because it's breaking out the single market. With the COVID crisis being the same way, the European Union has said, oh, we'll get out of the way, we'll let the states do what they want. And in fact, that is a really terrible thing because the states have a lot of money, subsidize their businesses. I mean, Adidas just received 2.6 billion from the German government. These companies can survive in certain states and not others. I think what we are calling for, Guy and me are calling, is really for a break in the past, with the past, is to say, we have a big objective. Let's not just have little means for big objectives. Let's have serious money behind our objective. And let's, once there is serious money behind it, you can be sure that the very good services of the Commission and the Parliament will come up with very good plans to digitalize, to get green infrastructure. I mean, the green investment needs a boost. How are we going to have electric cars if we don't have the green infrastructures? We need the garages to have plugs. We need the streets to have infrastructure to plug the cars. All of those investments can be done at the European level, removing that investment from the responsibility of the state, who has a huge step boarding at the same time as pushing Europe to act in a concerted way. So I think that's the way to restart the economy consistently with our objectives.
Guy Verhofstadt, how do we avoid the lowest common denominator in these objectives?
In politics, it's always difficult.
That's what they call compromise.
Avoid that. But I think we have more chances to have good results in a communitarian system where the Commission has the power to make the selection than into an intergovernmental system where automatically you need to give something to everybody around the table, because that's an intergovernmental system. Intergovernmental system means that you will give money to projects in some member states that are less valid, less interesting, because it's an intergovernmental system and everybody needs to agree. So you need to give. So therefore, I think that a system, a fund on the communitarian level with the European Commission, if there is a good scrutiny, not only by the European Parliament, but also by the stakeholders in the economy and by the companies themselves, there is a possibility to have a far better return than we have in an intergovernmental typical way of working. And besides digital transformation, besides climate change, the climate deal, I see two other elements that are important. That is health. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. Health issue will be, and the fourth, the last one is the strategic interest of the Union. It became clear that besides digital transformation, besides climate change, besides the challenges in health, that this crisis illustrates that we don't have anymore a number of strategic activities in Europe, and that we are full depending from other parts of the world. So it's not only about digital transformation and climate change and health. I think that is how to rebuild maybe some strategic capacity, industrial capacity in Europe needs to be a fourth element of this whole exercise.
Now we talked about raising the money, about what's different from your plan to the plan the Commission might be putting forward, but our participants, they want to know, and I think there's a very, very valid question, what are the chances actually to get it through, to get it passed, to make it happen? So one of our participants asked, how do you ensure that this plan gets adopted in this complex, that's to say the least, MFF playing field? You have the Friends of Cohesion, you have the Frugal Four, you have farmers, and you have, of course, member states, maybe like Poland, who oppose the Green Deal ambitions. So how do you in a way navigate your proposal in this environment? And once we try to answer this question, there's also another point coming up via Facebook from Antonio saying, do you think when the Commission comes up with a proposal, for instance, will Parliament be ready to speak with one voice to say, for instance, the Green Deal ambitions in this plan are not big enough for us. There is not enough digitalization and future-related investment in this budget. So maybe choose whatever you which question you want to pick. Will Parliament be able really to change an MFF proposal? And first part of the question, how do we get to a proposal in the first place with all these diverging interests in the EU of 27? Maybe.
If I let Guy answer the Parliament one, he probably answers the two. But I will focus on the first issue, which is the political viability. It's still, I mean, clearly there is a lot of resistance for the northern states. But I would say the reason Guy and me put this on the table is precisely because we thought it was politically viable. I mean, precisely because we think you have the Commission who can borrow and spend in a way that is credible. It's not giving money to the states that some countries would worry. For the southern countries, what is there to take? Well, it's a big size. For the northern countries, what's there to take? They don't need to put more money. There is going to come from the new resources, the digitax, etc., like he was mentioning before. So we actually see it in the strength of this plan exactly as the fact that going beyond the images that some people can have of the debt is long or whatever it is, if you actually go to the actual commitment that the states have to make, this is a plan that for every single state has something that should make it visible. So in that sense, my sense is when states look at all the alternatives, they will reject them all, and maybe they will actually end up finding this is the least rejectable one.
I think if I can continue on what Luis is saying, it's important that the proposal we have done, it's not about mutualization of all debt. It's not about creating new debt and mutualization of this new debt. So that is what we try to avoid in this whole proposal, because that brings us back to the old discussions during the financial crisis, during the sovereign debt crisis, and that is what we absolutely don't need now. We need to have a plan for the future on economic reconstruction, recovery, and that's completely different than the mutualization discussions of we got during the financial crisis and the other. So, I think that the way we have approached it has the possibility, if people are really in an objective way looking to it, to bridge the differences between the South and the North, to bridge this difference. The second is Parliament. I think that the European Parliament has an enormous role to play, and that is to work to support the Commission in this work and to come forward with an ambitious proposal. Is there a huge majority in the Parliament for that? The answer is yes. We got already a vote on a resolution. I don't know how many paragraphs it were, but a very detailed resolution has been adopted with a huge majority in the Parliament. So there is a solid majority in the Parliament to go in the direction of such an ambitious plan, not to give new loans to countries, but to give direct help to innovative industries in health, digital, climate change, and the strategic sectors of Europe. I think it's now. I hope one thing that is that the Commission and von der Leyen has a Delors moment, that you remember there was a huge stagflation in the 80s. By the end of the 80s, Europe was the sick man of the world economy in the 80s with those stagflation. And Delors came with the single market. He launched in 1985, 86 this whole project. And even before the start of the internal market, that boosted the European economy. I think that if von der Leyen comes with a huge proposal, I think 1 trillion is necessary, ambitious, and in fact directed to this health, digital transformation, climate change, and strategic sectors. With such a plan, it's going to boost also our economy. We're going to recover faster than we have recovered after the financial crisis of 2008. Because let's be honest, we got a lost decade then, between 2008 and 2015, 16, 17. And the financial crisis was followed by the sovereign debt crisis. We can avoid that this trap this time, but that means that there has to be ambition from the side of the Commission, and I hope that that she has that ambition and that she sees that the role of the Commission has nothing to do with what Paris wants, with what Berlin wants, with what Rome wants, with what whatever country wants. That it is something that goes beyond.
Can I just jump in there and take it for a brief moment on the slippery level of politics, maybe? Does she have, because I totally agree with what you're saying, and I like the comparison with the Delors moment, but does von der Leyen have this authority you need for that? Or and you said she shouldn't look at Paris, but doesn't she have to look at Paris because Macron made her what she is now, Commission President? She wasn't elected into this office. So she was decision by heads of state. So do we see this is it a lack of authority because the process she got into her office was problematic, just in a nutshell?
But at the same time in politics, it's also an opportunity. Why? Because that remembers me again, Delors. Delors was the Minister of Finance of Mitterrand. And everybody said, oh, Delors, that's the guy of Mitterrand, and nothing will happen. And the opposite happened, because Delors is a character, is a personality, and he used that to say, yeah, but I have a vision, and I'm going to try to push forward that vision. So that is my hope. Von der Leyen also. Von der Leyen has now the moment to liberate herself. Yeah, okay, but that makes a great chair of the Commission.
I like.
So it's not only a break moment for the European Union. It's also for her.
I like very much directly to von der Leyen. I hope she takes it. And there are two things on the politics that I want to emphasize. And one was
hopefully she follows our discussion.
Yes, she's probably. Thanks for hello.
Friday afternoon, what would she do?
So yes, what else? So I want to emphasize a couple of things on the politics that are very important. Language matters a lot. One important thing Guy raised is that mutualization. Our proposal says, no, you, Germany, Netherlands, nobody's asking you to take over any Spanish, Portuguese, Italian debt, neither before nor future. We're not talking about mutualizing past or future debt. We're talking about doing a project together, which is this investment and recovery and restructuring fund. So the mutualization discussion is key, and we have to win it, because if people talk about, oh, this is mutualization, etc., then they're going to be against. And this is the key thing here is we don't want to fall into that discussion. The second is the idea of solidarity. I think that I've never thought I would tweet Mr. Varoufakis, but I did tweet something he said a couple of days ago. He said, let's not use the solidarity vocabulary. It's not that we are asking, it's like Adam Smith talking about how the baker doesn't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because he's very nice and wants to help us. He wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning because he's going to earn some money from selling us bread. This is the same point. We don't want this plan to be put in place because we believe that we need some solidarity from the south, from the north to the south. That's not the point. it's really in the interest of everybody to take an insurance policy for the survival of Europe and to ensure that we get out of this crisis in a positive, in a good way, in a growth way, and not have another lost decade, like Guy Verhofstadt was saying. So I would say, let's be smart about the language, and let's be smart about how we think about this, instead of like falling into these old words that don't help.
Thanks for that. Many of our participants want us to broaden the view once again a bit and look at outside Europe. And they're in a way challenging your plan also with respect to how, for instance, the US would react to a digital tax, to a carbon border adjustment tax, proposals which are there to increase their own resources. And we of course know that there are countries out there who kind of oppose these measures. The US is, for example, blocking a global solution, as both of you of course know, on the digital tax, and it's threatening retaliatory tariffs in case there's a carbon border adjustment thing being applied. How is there a chance to overcome these kind of obstacles? Carlos is asking, and let me broaden this a bit, maybe in a second part. How important is it, if you look that the pandemic, of course, affects all parts of the world? How important is it that Europe, in getting out of this crisis economically, gets a head start, maybe before the US or China? Maybe, Luis, you want to start with that, and Guy comes in later.
Yes, I am happy to start. So there are three questions. Let's take them one at a time. CCTV, Digitax. And so on the CCTV, I don't want to use acronyms, people will get lost. This is the Digitax. The idea of, goes further than Digitax. You're saying they're blocking the Digitax. The fact is the UK is saying, let's not just do a digital tax, let's have a global solution. The OECD is discussing, hopefully for the Q3, Q4 of this year. That was the original plan. I don't know how that changes with this mess. But the idea was, we're going to have an agreement globally to have a solution that will allow us to make sure that all multinationals, not just digitals, have to face at least a common corporate tax base. We don't have these tricks where, to the Irish, I tell my base is in the US because my CEO is in the US. In the US, I say, well, my base is in Ireland because that's where I'm registered. No, and so I don't pay in any of the two places. We want a common corporate tax base, and I think there was a possible agreement on that globally. But on both issues, on the border adjustment tax, just to explain to our listeners what it is, the idea is if you don't have to pay any carbon taxes in your origin, we're not going to allow the aluminum and steel companies of Europe, for example, to go to another country where they don't have to pay for polluting, then pollute the atmosphere the same, and then sell us the cheap aluminum and steel. To some extent, this particular issue is a matter of European sovereignty. I mean, honestly, Europe has to be very strong-minded on this. If we don't do this, the jobs are going to go, the planet is going to get polluted. Europe needs to be very firm on this tax, and if the US doesn't want it, then that's the moment to use Europe's soft power in this fight.
Yep.
I agree. A head start for Europe out of this crisis. If you look globally to the US, to China, how important is this? Is this also part of your thinking when you say make it big, to get out of this crisis?
But look, the Americans decided already weeks ago on a 2.2 trillion stimulus package. And the American administration is adding to that special support for these sectors. They are in full swing. They are not looking to Europe and saying, "Oh, what can Europe think about this or that?" And the same for the Chinese. I think the most important word that Luis in his answer a few moments ago used was European sovereignty. It's if we want a digitax because we think that is a good funding, and it's also necessary because these American firms are mainly using our data for free to make profit in their country. That's European sovereignty. So it's maybe this crisis could be the start of some thinking about European sovereignty, about using European sovereignty in the real world. What we never did until now. So, but I'm against this idea. Oh no, we cannot do this, we cannot do that, because the Americans will react in that way, or the Chinese will do this. No, we are before the most biggest economic crisis we have ever seen, I think, for 100 years. And in such a crisis, we need to take our own decisions that we think are good decisions, and we need not to look too much to other parts of the world. We need to do our work, our task, our duty for all citizens, for our companies.
Some of our listeners also ask us to look at our immediate neighborhood, and they're asking that given that the Western Balkans, Emil Kirias, given that the Western Balkans are in a deep integration process with the EU, and he's quoting words of the Commission there, those countries should be fully integrated in the plan and the fund. Do you agree, or what's your take on that, Guy Verhofstadt?
Yeah, I agree, and this is already the case. So you have seen that the European Commission in the last weeks had also liberated a number of funds, especially to Western Balkan countries. And I think it's a very good approach, because let's be honest, their place is in the European Union and not outside the European Union. And I'm always thinking that it's better to have peace between the Western Balkan countries by being integrated in the European Union. And that is a better way to tackle that problem than to put soldiers on the ground, as we still have. There are European soldiers on Kosovo, on the border between Serbia and Kosovo. There are still European soldiers in Bosnia-Herzegovina. That's crazy. It's far better that they are integrated, these countries in the Union, and that we keep stability by having them inside the European family better than outside the European family, and then with the obligation to put boots on the ground in that part of Europe.
Luis Garicano, a bit on negotiation strategy. Eva is asking, and she's referring to the Spanish government, so I give this question to you, of course. It's actually, I would say, a great question. Is it actually helpful or harmful that the Spanish government took on board part of your proposal? Also, Eva says the government didn't get all your negotiation strategy right. For instance, that you were saying we can freeze member states' contributions to the MFF. Of course, that wasn't part of Mr. Sanchez's plan, which was discussed at the summit yesterday. But have there been any secret channels you've been discussing with them? Or is this pure coincidence that this idea of perpetual debt is also showing up in the paper?
No, Guy and me have spent the last few weeks basically calling everybody in every government that we could, and commissioners, etc. So we have definitely talked to them. I would say there are some issues in the negotiation strategy that can be improved. There were some countries that were taken aback by the government coming without having necessarily talked to them before. But I'm happy, and we're happy that anybody takes it. We're happy that Roberto Gualtieri, the Italian minister, supported it. We hope the French will also come on board. And I mean, what we need is some other European country to start being sympathetic to this.
We have other questions coming in. We have still 15 minutes, so if people want to still ask questions, we have a lot of them, but maybe if you think about asking, please do so now so I can forward them to our panelists. When it comes to spending the money, we talked about the Green Deal and digitalization, but others also asked, wouldn't it be a good time now for the EU to build a common defense against a possible second pandemic wave, or some possible new pandemic which might come after this crisis? Could that be something where money which is raised with your proposal, or in any other way the Commission might come up with, is also channeled to? How are we prepared for that? Because of course, we've all been told now, and we've been reporting this from the very beginning of the crisis, that the EU has nothing to say in health matters. Of course, I totally understand, and I guess you as well, that for citizens, this is not a very satisfactory answer when it comes to a pandemic, which is not stopping at borders. Guy Verhofstadt, what do you think of that taking money to fight a second wave of this pandemic?
Well, a few moments ago, we talked about the four fields in which, and one field was health. Okay. I don't think it's necessary, and it's good to say now, oh, health will be now a European competence. That's not necessary. I think that it's clear that health is national, regional, local, and that it doesn't work badly in most of our countries. Let's be honest. Finally, we have seen that in many countries, the number, for example, the quality of our medical services were good, were resilient to this crisis. But what we have to take as a lesson is that we need on the European level at least a crisis mechanism and management when a pandemic is emerging. And that we didn't see in this crisis. We have some instruments, but they were not used, or we were not capable to use them. I give an example: the European Medical Corps. European Medical Corps makes part of the European Civil Protection Mechanism. And in the European Medical Corps, normally that should have a number of instruments, doctors, medical equipment to go into an emergency situation somewhere in Europe. So I asked to the Commission in two letters, what happened to this European Medical Corps? Has that European Medical Corps not been, why it has not been activated? And the answer was that, yeah, in fact, the European Medical Corps doesn't exist, because it are member states who have to pledge doctors and medical equipment to the European Medical Corps, and none of the member states pledged that. So it was like an empty shell body, and impossible to use it. So we have to learn lessons about that. That is to create on the European level the instruments that can be activated, and activated in real terms. So that you see the difference, so that people see when there is happening what happened in Italy, that equipment and doctors are flying in for other parts of the European Union to help in the Italian hospitals. We didn't see that. Maybe there was a transfer of equipment and of medicine to Italy, but no, what we have seen on our television screens was Russians coming in, or equipment coming from China, and not this European these European instruments that nevertheless exist on paper. On paper they exist, but in practice not. So we need to learn that lesson, and maybe, as you say, also to use part of that recovery fund, a reconstruction fund, to build this capacity on a European level. Like we need also capacities, let's be honest, on this medical equipment, as we have seen. What we have seen with masks, with ventilators, that is the fourth element where we are talking about, that in a number of strategic sectors, we need also to see how to rebuild our industrial capacity.
Peter, if I may add something on a much larger dimension, not specifically on the pandemic, on which I subscribe to every word he said in his answer. That symbolic dimension, that is not just that you have to do things, but it has to be seen that you do these things, and that Europeans perceive that Europe is there for them, is huge, and it has been so abundant in this crisis. As Guy was saying, all these symbols, all these, I mean, the Chinese are so much better at this, and it really bothers me and bothers all of us who are fighting for Europe. The situation in Italy, he's probably better and more acquainted with the situation in Italy in many ways than me, because he has a long-standing relation with the country. But the situation in Italy is very, very, very dangerous for Europe. Italians have had 30 years with no growth in GDP per capita. They've had 29 years, contrary to what every northern citizen from any northern country believes, 29 years out of those 30, they've had a primary budget surplus. They haven't been running deficits. They've been running a surplus. The deficit comes when you put the interest in. So they've been trying to act by the rules, and what they see is that Europe hasn't worked for them lately. And then you see they were hit very much by the first crisis, the euro crisis, and now they're being very hit again by the corona crisis, and they think and they perceive Europe is not there for them. And the risks that we're running are enormous. It's hard to overstate. And I don't know if this observation is clear enough Peter, I would ask you in this case, I take the opposite role, but I would ask you if it's clear enough to the readers of the media in Germany, in the Netherlands, etc., that, you know, the truth of the matter is the biggest winners of the single market have been countries like Germany and the Netherlands. The big winners of the European integration project have been them. And the perception that citizens end up getting is we are subsidizing all the soundness, when in fact, a country like Italy has done this primary budget surplus, has tried to do in many ways what has been asked for it. And it now feels at the end of the road. It now feels like, hey, you know, if Europe is not going to be for us here, then we really don't want to be there for Europe anymore.
I think, I mean, nice try to change the rules, but of course, I try to answer. I think people, I'm not able to speak for the people in Germany, especially as I'm living in Belgium since 5 years, but I think people see that this crisis, of course, is different than the euro crisis and the financial crisis. People see this. We had a demonstration, despite all the social distancing we should practice in Berlin. We had a demonstration in front of the Italian embassy 2 days ago in Berlin, people showing solidarity, going there. And I think even politicians in the German government are not most proud of their first decisions in blocking the export of medical equipment to Italy.
Yep.
Of course, has been reversed quickly, but it was there for
it was a very, very, very bad decision.
Yeah, I agree with that. On the other hand, I would say, and this is, I think, equally important, and then I stop and ask questions again. I think that the politicians in the South, if I might say that, also have to see that they are populists, not only like Mr. Salvini challenging Mr. Conte in Italy and trying every mistake the EU is doing to bring down his own government at home. We have populists in the Netherlands and in Germany as well. And of course, Madame Merkel has to see how she gets support for the measures which are discussed now on the European level, for instance, in the German Bundestag. And this is not the majorities for such a recovery fund, let's say, which hands out grants instead of loans on a big scale. It has to go through the Bundestag. It's not sure she gets a majority there. It clearly will be challenged in the German Constitutional Court, because everything which has to do with money and has to do with the EU is challenged in the German Constitutional Courts. And I don't know how this turns out. At least it will derail the time frame for these measures to be able to kick in. So I would say it's just too easy to say, in my opinion, the northern countries don't really understand solidarity and they don't see how much they profit from the European Union. But you're right, I give you that for sure, that there were measures at the beginning of the crisis which clearly are embarrassing for Germans. And I think other countries had these export bans as well, but I'm speaking here about Germany. Let's go, I think, maybe to a final question, a question which is not totally related to your proposal, but I'm sure both of you are very happy to answer it, because it's really an important question when talking about the MFF, and maybe a question which also goes to the core of what the European Union is at the moment. There's Amy who is reminding us on Facebook and asking the question if it's reasonable to add conditionalities, new conditionalities to handing out funds to member states. Of course, she's talking about her concerns, and I guess our all concerns about the power grab we have seen in places like Hungary. So how can we use the MFF, maybe regional funds, other money, channeled to countries like Hungary, but we could add Poland, of course. How could we use this to change the behavior of these governments? Because we have seen, if we look at the Article 7 procedures, the rule of law procedures, this is all nice, and resolutions by the European Parliament asking the Commission to do something, but this is going nowhere. So how could we use this money, this question of money, to bring back governments like the Orban government in Hungary to accepting European values? Guy, you want to start?
Well, I think that the answer is this fund will be part of the MFF. And as you know, there is a proposal on the table, and Parliament and our group is very much in favor of that. That is to put conditionality in receiving money, conditionality in the sense of rule of law, democracy, human rights. So I think that that we have to do everything what is in our capabilities to have this conditionality in the next MFF, and also link it to the new fund. That doesn't mean that money will not be spent in that country. That could mean that the money is spent in another way in that country, not giving the money to the Orban government, who can then decide with that money what they want, but directly transferring that money to companies, to local communities. So it's the fact that there is we have to be smart in the way we conceive this system. So, but I think there is a big, a huge chance that we're gonna obtain that in the next MFF, and it's also absolutely necessary, because one of my frustrations for the moment is that one of the first measures taken by the Commission was CR2, CRI, or I don't know how we have to pronounce it, this Corona response initiative.
And the biggest contributor was Orban again, huh? The biggest.
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly what I want to say. Yeah. When you see that the result is Poland received the most money, and the second country who received most money is Hungary. And then only Spain, Italy, and then all the others. So I asked a number of questions about that. They said, yeah, it's normal. That's in the regulation. I said, yeah, but if that is the result of the regulation, then it is a bad regulation, certainly to liberate money for Corona. No? So we're going to see how we're going to rectify this, but this can absolutely not continue. We liberate on an urgent basis money for Corona, and we use a regulation in which countries who are less affected by Corona receive the most money. So that are inconsistencies that are killing the European Union. And I like you, I think, was it in Der Spiegel or was it in Bild? I don't know.
It was our story.
It was the story.
Yeah, it was your story. It was a Der Spiegel story.
It was my colleagues, but we
okay. But when I saw that, then I said, yeah, we are killing Europe ourselves, huh? by doing it.
No, I don't want to add anything beyond saying that if you're Orban, you're really scared. The Popular Party is going to kick you out. Yes, for sure. They say it every few months, and they never do. And Europe is going to cut your money, and then you are on top of the list of biggest recipients. I mean, if you're Orban, what are you learning from this? That we are a joke a bit. And I feel a bit like you said about Germany. This situation is profoundly, deeply embarrassing for me personally. I mean, when I see the decree that Orban passed, and when we're just completely unable to even name it, I think there was a beautiful piece of trolling by the Hungarian government. Yes. They actually retweeted and commented positively on the resolution from the Commission. That was like on the decision of the Commission, that was like saying some countries are terrible and everything. And we're going to say, yeah, some countries are really terrible. Imagine, because it was not even named. So they could actually afford to agree.
Yeah.
But at the end, it could be a bigger threat to the European Union than the whole Corona crisis. Huh? There you're right.
If it's hollowed out from within with values, then if you let a dictatorship grow in the middle of the European Union.
Exactly.
Our time our time is up. My panelists, thanks very much for discussing with me, not only about your proposal, which I found more and more interesting the more time we spend on discussing that, but also I have to say, maybe what I found interesting is how the Commission and especially the President could use a bold proposal like yours to actually find maybe eventually her Delors moment and stand up to the national interests of member states. And maybe, I don't know, in the end, she might be thankful for having received your proposal there. So I'm thankful for your time. Thanks for discussing with me. And also thanks for all the participants. Most of the questions I asked came from them. So thanks for that and for the interest. And with that, I would give it back to Daniel, who will find a couple of final words to wrap it up, I think. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Peter. I will not try to summarize, wrap up, or anything like that. I think with these heavyweights from the European Parliament discussing, especially in the end, I think that is enough said. The only thing I would like to mention is, indeed, we are in difficult times and we should not leave these discussions to the forces outside and leave the devices to the people outside democratic consensus, and strengthen them with tools that we have devised in order to save the situation. And I'm very happy that no matter what happens with this approach, liberals are actually going forward and making suggestions. Unlike other groups and political families in Europe, liberals are actually coming forward with ideas how to renew Europe. Having said that, once more again, Guy, Luis, thank you so much for being with us today, for the initiative that you brought forward. Peter, thank you very much for your fantastic facilitation today. We had over 200 participants today asking questions, being interested. So thank you very much all at home. And let me just extend a small invitation on behalf of the European Liberal Forum. Next Wednesday at 9:30, we continue our series Liberties in Lockdown, where we talk about our freedoms in times of Corona and what happens with those. And we are going to talk about accountability, political accountability and democratic accountability in times of Corona. Again, a subject that unfortunately we have to talk about. Having said that, thank you very much again to the participants, panelists, and for your interest in this event of the European Liberal Forum.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.